Good afternoon all and welcome to Carlam Cymru revision sessions. This session this afternoon will focus on Spanish AS and will be presented by Ms Lardieri from Penglai School in Aberystwyth. The session will last around 45 minutes where Miss will go through the relevant subject content. If you have any questions, please use the question and answer section and we'll answer your questions as soon as possible. The session will be recorded and the recording and any relevant resources will be uploaded to the e-sgol website within the Carlam Cymru recordings section. Good, diolch yn fawr, Miss, over to you.
Okay. Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a la segunda sesión de español. Hoy vamos a hablar de traducción. So today we're going to develop some translation skills, and so we want to make sure that to tackle a translation for the AS level, so we're translating from Spanish into English, which is the easiest way to translate, but still needs practicing. So we want to use a checklist and follow the steps. Try to follow some practical steps. And look at recognizing verbs and grammatical the grammatical points that will make our translation more accurate. So the checklist, as we said, will give us a structure to follow while completing the translation. So hopefully the task won't feel as difficult if we can approach it and break it down in more manageable chunks. So we're going to look at some steps to get to a good translation. 10 pasos para lograr el éxito. The first one is read through the passage to be translated carefully to get an overview of the passage, and we're not just translated at this stage, we're just reading it through. We're going then to read through the passage again, highlight the words and sentences that we know in one color, and look at the ones that we don't know and see and highlight them in a different color. At this point, we can look at the words that we don't know, that we've highlighted. Could we use the context to understand and guess what do they mean? Because we won't have access to a dictionary during our translation session in the exam. Could we stretch these words? Are they cognates? Are they semi-cognates? Are they parts of words that we know? We'll then read through the passage again and look at the verbs, the tenses, the adjectives, the connectives, all the grammar structures, and try to look at them in context again and make sure that we do an accurate translation. At this point, we want to start our translation, and we do one sentence at a time. They are also marked one sentence at a time, so it's important that you follow translating sentence by sentence, word by word. Don't leave gaps. It's important that you don't leave gaps. If you're unsure of a particular word, try to find a synonym. Try to work out the meaning from the context. If the worst comes to the worst, guess it, but just don't leave the gap, don't leave a blank. Try to self-assess each sentence as you go along, and before you move to the next sentence, to the next tense. And it's important to go to step number 7 again. Read your translated sentence once again to make sure it makes sense and makes sense in English. A good rule of thumb for a good translation is that it sounds okay in English, you understand that it makes sense to you. After that, please look back at your actual Spanish passage and make sure that there is no words that have been omitted. Make sure that each sentence has been translated carefully and that you've included every single word. This is important. Every word has been included because every word should be translated. So again, make sure you don't forget any. Leave some time to look your translation again and check you cross out your rough draft if you made one, and make sure that your spelling, your writing is legible for the examiner. So let's have a look then at some examples of the translations. You can get a few if you click on the AS A-Level Spanish website with WJC. So it has been taken from a past paper from 2019. So we're going to go through the steps that we've highlighted earlier on. The first one is read through the passage to be translated carefully to get an overview of the passage. Remember not to start translating at this stage. So I'm going to read this out loud for you, and I just would like you to follow with my reading. Section C, translation, question 5. You can see that you have 20 marks available for this task. Traduce al inglés el siguiente texto subrayado del texto. ¿Por qué se ha duplicado el número de jóvenes que van a la universidad en América Latina? Muchos de los nuevos estudiantes que ingresaron al sistema educativo tienen escasa preparación académica, lo cual también explica por qué abandonan sus carreras. El crecimiento más fuerte se dio en el siglo XXI. ¿A qué se debió el fuerte aumento? Según el informe, al incremento del número de graduados de la educación secundaria y la reducción de restricciones financieras gracias a la introducción de becas y préstamos estudiantiles. So you read it the first time. You could read it a second time if you read it a second time on your own if you like. Maybe spend a minute doing this. If you like, you can pause the video and try to get a sense of the text. What is the general idea? Could you find some key words that give the general meaning? What is it the text about? Once you've done this, we go to step 2, read through the passage again. This time, highlight the words that you know in one color and the unfamiliar ones in another color. So, sorry, just going to try to highlight this. So I'm not sure why. Okay, I'll underline some of the words instead of highlight them. So I'm gonna say that perhaps we know muchos de los nuevos estudiantes, perhaps ingresaron could be one of the words that could start to create some issues. El sistema educativo tienen escasa, I'm gonna underline this word. This word is a difficult one, preparación académica, lo cual, I'm gonna highlight this one as well, también explica por qué abandonan sus carreras. El crecimiento más fuerte se dio en el siglo XXI. ¿A qué se debió el fuerte aumento? Según el informe, al incremento del número de graduados de la educación secundaria y la reducción de restricciones financieras gracias a la introducción de becas y préstamos estudiantiles. So I'd say that there might be a few words that I'm unsure about, or I might try to get through the text. Another idea is that you could also start writing what you know above So use this part of the test as a draft. Many, I know the muchos is many, nuevos, new, estudiante, students. So that's a good idea to start creating your first draft, and it'll give you a good base to have something to look at later on when you're continuing putting everything, when you're wrapping everything else up together. So at this point, you're looking at the words that you don't know. Yeah, could you guess what they mean? Is there any cognates, semicognates, parts of the words that you know? Can you make logical sense of them from the text? So for instance, I got this one. Many of the new students, just 1 second, please. Hello. Really sorry for the interruption. So we were looking at words that we don't know. Could we guess what they mean? So many of the new students which ingresaron al sistema educativo, so this educational system. So we know that ingresaron is from the past tense. So many students that came to the educative system, tienen, have got. Okay, so that's a good way to start having a draft. So look again through the passage and look at the verbs, look at the tenses. You can, if you've highlighted them in one color, you can now circle the verbs. So I got ingresaron is a verb. I'm going to circle them. Tienen is a verb. Explica is a verb. Abandonan is a verb. Se dio is a verb. Se debió is a verb. And I think that según el informe, al incremento del número de la graduación, la reducción secundaria gracias a la introducción de bienes préstamos estudiantiles. Okay, so we got these verbs. So what tense are they? So we can see that ingresaron. Can we recognize them? Is it, so it's the past tense, el pretérito, past tense. What person is that? Is it first, second, or third person? Yeah, so it's referring to muchos estudiantes. So a third person. Singular or plural? And we know that it's plural because it's they. Yeah. From which verb? So the verb is ingresar. So at this point, if we're looking at this in the at home and we have access to the dictionary, we still ensure we can guess it and then check the meaning in the dictionary. Again, for we know that this is plural, adjectives, muchos, so de los nuevos estudiantes, which came into educational system, tienen. What tense is it? It is, so we know that it's present tense, third person plural of the verb tener. to have. So how do we translate it? We translate it as they have. If we do this, it would help us to be more accurate and with all the words. So at this point, you're ready to start your translation, one sentence at a time. If you don't know a particular word or sentence, think of the synonym again instead of leaving a gap. So we're going to start looking at this sentence word by word. Muchos de los nuevos estudiantes que ingresaron al sistema educativo tienen escasa preparación académica. So can you try to translate this word for this sentence following the text? I'm gonna leave 1 minute before I put the answers out. How did you translate ingresaron? How do you translate escasa? And we look at the translation. So we got many of the new students who came into the education system of poor. Is escasa academic preparation. So you could even check how did you do? Could you self-assess this part of the exercise? Give yourselves maybe a mark out of 3, and then we'll see as well how the examiner marks. So let's say that you got it almost exactly the same or exactly the same, that there is no many issues in the translation. So you got 3 out of 3 is almost perfect. Perhaps you got a few gaps, maybe it could be 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3. Give particular focus to the verbs. Are the tenses correct? Did you use the correct tense? So if you didn't, give less of a mark to the translation, but if you got it almost correct, but you got little mistakes, then maybe you can give 2 out of 3. Let's have a look at the second part of the text. Lo cual también explica por qué abandonan sus carreras. So again, you want to try to think which words could create a bit of a difficulties. Could be lo cual. So maybe write down above the words that you know. So you know that also explica. What tense is it? Is it present? So it's present tense. You go explains. Porque. We know that is why. And maybe you might not be sure of abandonan, and might remember this carreras is profession, careers, yeah, profession, career. This might help as well to have a bit of a visual of what the full text means. So remember that this was part of the full tense of the full sentence. So lo cual can be translated. Can you make sense of what these words that we left out could be? So take a second, take a minute, try to translate, and I'll put the answers out. Which. So lo cual is which, and is the requirement to have it. Okay, so make sure you familiarize yourselves with the connectors, which also explain why they give up, abandonan their studies. And we're gonna carry on. El crecimiento más fuerte se dio en el siglo XXI. ¿A qué se debió el fuerte aumento? So se dio is a verb. Can you remember which tense is it? If you said past tense, pretérito, past tense, was it's correct. Of the verb, which verb? Donar. Do you know what this means? What about crecimiento? If you don't know crecimiento, do you know what crecer means? Have you ever heard of the word crecer? Crecido. Can you ring a bell with any English words? What about el siglo XXI? ¿A qué se debió el fuerte aumento? Okay, and I'll leave you a minute to try to figure out the answers. The biggest growth, el crecimiento más fuerte, the biggest growth, crecimiento, took place, se dio, in the 21st century, siglo. To what was the big increase due? So, ¿a qué se debió? To what? ¿A qué? To what was the big increase? El fuerte aumento due. ¿A qué se debió? And we'll look another little sentence of this translation. Según el informe al incremento del número de graduados de la educación secundaria. To carry on, have the old text nearby. Yeah, remember the question. So you're asking, to what was the big increase due? And here is the answer. To what was the big increase due? Según el informe, there's a word that you might be using for the oral as well. Según el mundo, según un artículo. So according to is a good word to memorize, even for referring to your sources in the oral. According to el informe, what was the big increase due? According to el informe, it was due to el incremento del número de graduados de la educación secundaria. What's graduados? Educación secundaria. So write down right above what you know and try to work out the words that you are unsure of. I'm going to put the answers down. According to the report, el informe, to the growth, el incremento, in the number of students finishing their secondary education. y la reducción de restricciones financieras gracias a la introducción de becas y préstamos estudiantiles. So that's the second part of the same paragraph. So according to the report, to the growth in the number of students finishing the secondary education, and what else? Y la reducción de restricciones financieras could be the reduction of financial restriction. Notice that doing this exercise helps you out before you put it all together to have a literal visualization of every single word. Translating every single word, you can realize, you can make sure that you're not leaving anything out before you actually put it all together nicely in English in a way that makes sense, because you wouldn't say in English and the reduction of the restrictions financials, you wouldn't say that. Yeah, so make sure as well here you got your agreements. Yeah, so pay attention to that. Gracias a, thanks to, a, the introduction of, you might be struggling with this word, becas y préstamos. Do you know them? If you don't, and you find them out now, it's worthwhile taking notes when you're exercising. What does becas mean? You could create some flashcards and make sure that you're memorizing this word. What about préstamos? Yeah, estudiantiles, so it's for students, it's related to students. Students for students, yeah? So becas is funding and loans. So let's have a look how to put it all together. And the reduction of financial restrictions tend to the introduction of grants and student loans. Okay, so we got the full translation in here. So once you've done this step by step, your translation will be looking roughly like this. So what you do is that, again, you read your translated sentence once again to make sure it makes sense and makes sense in English. I'm going to read it out loud for you again. Many of the new students who came into the education system have poor academic preparation, which also explains why they give up their studies. The biggest growth took place in the 21st century. To what was this big increase due? According to the report, to the growth of the number of students finishing the secondary education and the reduction of financial restrictions thanks to the introduction of grants and student loans. Step 8, you look back at the actual Spanish passage, check that you haven't omitted anything, check a sentence carefully to make sure that every word has been included. Remember that every single word should be translated, so you make sure you don't forget any. Okay, so you have the sentence in here. I'm going to read it one more time for you, including the title, which is, you don't have to translate, but usually helps to set the understanding. ¿Por qué se ha duplicado el número de jóvenes que van a la universidad en América Latina? Muchos de los nuevos estudiantes que ingresaron al sistema educativo tienen escasa preparación académica, lo cual explica también por qué abandonan sus carreras. El crecimiento más fuerte se dio en el siglo XXI. ¿A qué se debió el fuerte aumento, según el informe, al incremento del número de graduados de la educación secundaria y la reducción de restricciones financieras gracias a la introducción de becas y préstamos estudiantiles. At the end, leave some time to look over your translation again. It's really quite important that you take this time to check on your accuracy. Check you have crossed out the rough draft if you made one. And make sure that your handwriting is legible. So we put another example in here from the 2008. So from 2018. So I'm gonna leave this here for you. If you are listening from home, it's worthwhile to pause this, just have a look at the steps and try to translate the text following the steps. So again, highlight the words that you're familiar with in one color, the ones that you're not familiar with in a different color, and carry on this way. I put as well in here so I leave this for you for your translation, but I wanted to show as well how these translations are marked. So as you can see, this would be the original test. The translation from Spanish into English is marked according to AO2. The translation is divided into 5 parts of similar complexity, which is a bit what we have done earlier on, breaking it down. So this is the way that your translation will be marked. You will mark each one of the 5 parts on a scale 0 to 4. Using the descriptors below as a guide to determine which mark should be awarded for each section. You will mark positively. This is for the examiner, so make sure that you mark fairly. Don't mark too positively. Leave the examiner to hopefully give you a positive mark. The overall mark would be the addition of the total marks for each of the 5 parts to give a total out of 20. So look back at your translation, the one that we've done together. Go from 0 to 4. Go from the bottom band to the top. Did you give a limited response? Was there a general lack of understanding of the lexis and the idiom of the language of study? So let's say if you struggle with this sentence, let's say that you only gave, you might get 1 out of 4. How much did you get in this one? So this could have been 4 out of 4. So sum up in the end all the parts of your translation. So 1 for limited response, general lack of understanding, and the lexis and the idiom of language of study. 2, some good responses demonstrating a degree of understanding of the lexis and idioms or language of study. You get 3 if your parts of the translation are good responses, demonstrated a good understanding of the lexis and idiom of the language studied. So that is your vocabulary as well as the structures. And then for number 4, you got very good responses where you show a very good understanding and appreciation of the vocabulary and the idioms of the Spanish text. You got some suggestions for translation in this one, so I would suggest that you pause and you tackle this translation exercise as we've done together. And then after that, try to mark it. Look, you got here the original test, a suggested translation, and then some acceptable alternatives and words that are not acceptable. So make sure you mark fairly with your work. To carry on tackling translation is worthwhile. Sorry, is worthwhile doing some reading as well. So these are some suggestions for reading, and we can have a look at some of these websites together. So here you got lecturas en español con ejercicios imprimibles. So there's some exercises that you can print off. De comprensión de lectura. So I'm gonna open this one, and I'm also going to open these lecturas paso a paso del Instituto Cervantes. So the Cervantes Institute is a very well-known institution for the learning of the Spanish language, very well-known and appreciated, worthwhile. So you got in here some reading with exercises. So you want to be doing the nivel intermedio, so the intermediate level. Whereas nivel inicial, it's this lecturas, so beginners level. But if you're struggling, you can also try to do a more easy ones. So let's just take one to have a look. So if we open this one, La Pajarita de Papel, you got a little story here. And again, you can just break it down in smaller chunks. So you got narración. I'll do the same thing as we done earlier on with the first paragraph. Okay, and you don't have to read the whole text. I mean, you can if you want, but you could as well just read little by little and try your translation. La pajarita de papel. Tato tenía 6 años y un caballo de madera. Un día su padre le dijo, dentro de poco es tu cumpleaños. ¿Qué regalo quieres? Tato no sabía qué pedir. Entonces vio un pisapapeles sobre la mesa de su padre. Era una pajarita de plata sobre un pedazo de madera y sobre la madera estaba escrito: para los que no tienen tiempo de hacer pajarita. So again, look at your steps. What words do you know? So it said, do you know la? Do you know papel? Do you know what pajarita means? I'm gonna put Tato tenía 6 años y un caballo de... Un día su padre le dijo, dentro de poco es tu cumpleaños. ¿Qué regalo quieres? Tato no sabía qué, entonces vio un pisapapeles sobre la mesa de su padre. Era una pajarita de plata sobre un pedazo de madera. Sobre la madera estaba escrito: para los que no tienen tiempo de hacer pajaritas. So I'm gonna put these words in different colors, the ones that might be slightly more challenging. What do you think is pajarita? What do you think is madera? What about dentro de poco? How could you translate this into English? What about pedir? Vio, pisapapeles. So I'm gonna put these words. So we got some keywords. What about pajarita? So it's feminine, and the pájaro is a bird. La pajarita is the small bird. And it's a feminine, small female bird. Yeah. De papel, of paper. So it's the paper bird, the small paper bird. Tato, so again, how would you translate Tato? Was 6, and he had a caballo, a horse made of madera, wood. Yeah. So if you are unsure, once you're doing this type of exercises, if you are unsure of single words, you can also look, make sure you're using just a online dictionary. So for instance, word reference, it's quite useful for this one. And so you could do from Spanish into English. So you put madera if this is an unfamiliar word, and check the work. Yeah, so you got wood in here and the explanation. Okay, so that's one exercise. If you look here again at the Cervantes Institute, you got, you can see that you got some lecturas paso a paso. So these are graduated reading exercises, which are organized in 3 levels: inicial, so basic; intermedio, which is intermediate, which is where you want to be at the moment; y avanzado, and higher. So let's have a look at nivel intermedio. You could just pick a book. There is several one. El Paso del Fuego, Una Mujer en Apuros, Guantanamera, Muerte entre Muñeco, Memorias de Septiembre, Un Sueño Muy Extraño, Lola, El Secreto de Cristóbal Colón, Una Morena y una Rubia, La Batalla de Tomate. Okay, so just pick one, and it's a good idea, but just carry on reading for pleasure, and look at the words that are unfamiliar for you. It's a good way to develop your familiarity with the language. So I'm gonna open this La Battaglia de Tomate. Okay, and here you got the text. You got some exercises that you can do before reading, after reading, and some information about the book sobre el libro. So I'm gonna go straight to the texto, and it's quite interesting because it's on La Tomatina de Buñol. So it's the festival of the tomatina that happens in Spain, in Buñol. It says, imagínate una fiesta en la que puedes ensuciarte completamente de la cabeza a los pies. Imagínate a miles de personas lanzándose unas a otros tomates maduros. Amy Randall participa en una batalla muy particular en la que acaba bañada en salsa de tomate. So, imagínate, imagine a party in which, en la que you puedes ensuciarte, get yourself dirty, completamente, entirely dirty, de la cabeza a los pies, from head to feet. Imagínate, imperative, imagine yourself miles from people that are throwing to ourselves, lanzándose one to the other or to each other, unos a otros, tomates maduros. So there is also a little information about the text. It's not coming up, but Amy Randall participates in a battle, in a fight muy particular, very particular, in which, en la que, acaba, ends out, bañada, drawn, en salsa de tomate, in tomato sauce. And it's a small text. Again, it's worthwhile reading it. And, you know, every paragraph could be one part of that translation. So we have time for one. Una batalla de tomate en medio de una plaza parece una película de hermanos Marx. Sin embargo, una fiesta sí existe. Se celebra cada año el último miércoles de agosto en Buñol, un pueblo de Valencia. La tomatina es una de las fiestas más insólitas y divertidas de España. Okay, and so good luck with your translations. And if you have any questions, just make sure you write them down in the chat and I'll try to answer. Is there any questions?
No, nothing's come through.
Okay, muchas gracias entonces, and have a good evening and good luck with the exams.